Hey, it's Louie. Really quick before we get started, this video is brought to you by my new game, Lava Run. It's a craftable board game where you help a dinosaur escape a volcanic eruption, and the best part is that the crochet dinosaur from this video is actually a playable piece in the game. Lava Run is coming as a crowdfunding project in September. You can learn more by using the link in the description or by going to lavarungame.com. Hey there, it's Louie, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to crochet this adorable baby Brontosaurus. And not only is this maybe one of the cutest things that I've ever crocheted, but it's also a no-sew pattern. I'm so proud of that. Basically, all you need to do is sew it closed at the bottom. There's nothing sewed together or sew onto this pattern, and I'm just really proud of designs like that. And we're going to be learning how to turn it into a baby Plesiosaur, which is kind of like a baby Loch Ness Monster pattern. If you want to follow along with the written version of this tutorial and download the interactive PDF with check marks to keep track of your progress, check out the links on screen now in the description below or by going to clubcrochet.com/dinosaur. From that page, not only will you find the written version, but you'll also find all my other dinosaur themed patterns, and there's kind of a lot, and maybe I'm getting a little over obsessed with them. I don't know, you can let me know in the comments if that's the case. Okay, well, we got a few things to go over before we get started. The first is that this pattern is actually pretty beginner friendly. I did try to go really slowly in the tutorial, but if you're a complete beginner and you've never crocheted before in your life, I suggest starting with my Crocheting 101 series that you can find at crocheting101.com. That series will take you through all the basics of learning how to crochet, and then you can get started on this pattern. Or you can try one of my more beginner-friendly patterns, like our baby Triceratops pattern. That's a great resource as well. Also, if you have extra questions and you need extra help, I suggest checking out the Discord channel or Facebook group linked in the description, or commenting down below. I'll try to help out as much as possible, but the Discord channel and Facebook group are a great resource to get extra help from other like-minded crocheters. You can also join our live crochet alongs. I do a live crochet along every single week where I'll crochet something from my library live on camera. You can join those to ask extra questions, get help if you need it, or just hang out with other like-minded crocheters like myself. To join those live crochet alongs, all you need to do is like down below, subscribe to the channel, and hit the little bell icon so you don't miss it when we go live. There are also a few different versions of this video available. Obviously, we have the full-length version, which is the one you're watching. There's also a left-handed and right-handed version of this video, and an abridged version where I go really quickly through the pattern for people that don't really need to learn how to crochet, but just already know and just want to get to it really fast. Links for all those are also in the description. Finally, there are time codes to go along with this video where you can use it to quickly jump around in the pattern. You can find links for that in the description and on the PDF and on the bar at the base of this video as well. All right, well, let's talk about all the materials that you'll need to crochet this baby Brontosaurus. For this pattern, you're going to need the following materials. First, let's start with our yarn. For this video, you're only going to need one color, and I'm going to be using our Amigurumi cotton yarn from our crochet kits. It's just my favorite kind of yarn to use for Amigurumi. By the way, we have crochet kits available. If you'd like to get a kit with all the materials to make a bunch of different dinosaurs, they're linked in the description, and this is our own Amigurumi cotton. But again, you don't really need to use cotton yarn. You can use any kind of yarn you want. Just make sure to use the right crochet hook for the yarn. In fact, here's one that I made with blanket yarn, so you can see how much bigger it actually crochets if you use bigger yarn. But again, if you're using different yarn, you need a different crochet hook. For our purposes, because we're using Amigurumi cotton yarn, we're going to be using a size G 4mm crochet hook. It's just the best kind of hook to use with the yarn we're using. So just make sure to use a bigger hook if you're using bigger yarn, of course. You'll also need scissors for, cutting stuff. These are in our dinosaur crochet kits, by the way, our little hidden scissors here. You'll need a darning needle for sewing closed at the end. You don't really need a crimped end like this because all you need to do is sew it closed at the bottom, but I do suggest getting one with a crimped end. It just makes it easier to get in and out of hard to reach stitches. And then you'll need some safety eyes. Now I'm using 6mm safety eyes in this video, and that's what I suggest using for Amigurumi cotton yarn. But if you're making this for baby, don't use safety eyes. Try using embroidering with some black yarn instead. It's just a little bit safer. And then the last thing you'll need is some stuffing. I'm going to be just using polyfill stuffing. You can also stuff it with extra threads of yarn if you want to be more sustainable and stuff like that. Okay, well, I think that's everything I wanted to go over. If you got any other questions, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you again for supporting this channel. Make sure to like and subscribe down below, and yeah, let's get hooking. Okay, we're going to get this Brontosaurus started by using our yellow yarn, and we're going to start with a slip knot and chain 4. For a slip knot, if you haven't made one before, you just want to flip the yarn over itself to create a loop, then pinch that loop at the connection point and flip the loop over the long end attached to the ball. Now pull the long end through the loop and pinch the tail end with your other finger to hold it in place as you pull it through and create a little knot. What's really cool about a slip knot is that when you pull the tail end, nothing should happen, but when you pull the other end, it should pull the loop tighter. Now what we need to do is place our crochet hook into that loop, pull it tight around the crochet hook. You don't want to pull it too tight, you want it smooth enough to be moving on the crochet hook, but tight enough where it doesn't just slip off automatically as well. Okay, we're gonna start our Brontosaurus by chaining 4. For a chain, all you need to do is yarn over with the end attached to the ball of yarn like that, place it over the crochet hook, and then hold the chain or the slip knot at its base right here and pull that loop through the loop on the hook. So we're going to do that by twisting the yarn to make it line up with the hole and scooping it through like that to really make sure you get under all of the threads of the loop. We want to do that 4 times. So there's 1 chain, we want 4 chains. We're going to yarn over again and pull that through the next one, hold it tight close to the end, twist and scoop to get through another chain. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to start with that 4 chain start. And to get started, we're going to do round 1. We're going to start into the second chain from the hook, meaning this one right here, the second one over. And we're going to start by doing 2 single crochets. So 1 into the first chain and 1 into the next chain. Then we're going to do 3 single crochets into our last chain right here, which will turn our piece around 180 degrees. And then we'll continue doing stitches on the other side. Let's start with our first single crochet. If you never made a single crochet before, all you need to do is we're going to get into the stitch. In this case, it's going to be the second chain from the hook right here. So we're going to take our crochet hook, place it into that second chain from the hook, into the top of the loop there. Then we can yarn over it with the end attached to the ball, and then pull it under that stitch like this to get 2 loops on our hook. Once you have 2 loops on the hook, you can yarn over again with the end attached to the ball and pull it through the 2 loops on the hook by twisting and scooping to really make sure you get under all the threads there. And that will be our first single crochet. This pattern is going to be made almost entirely with that stitch. So we're going to be doing that stitch very, very often in this pattern. Let's go ahead and do it again. We're going to go into our next stitch right here. And we're going to do another single crochet. So we're going to go into that next chain like that. Yarn over with the end attached to the ball. Pull it through the chain. So you have 2 loops on the hook. Then going over, we're going to yarn over again and pull through the 2 loops on the hook to finish our second single crochet. Okay, so there's our 2 single crochets. Now we want to do 3 single crochets into the third chain right here. So into our next chain, we want to do 3 single crochets into that same stitch. So we're going to go into it, start it as normal, do 1 single crochet into that stitch like that. Now we want to do 2 more into the same stitch. You can kind of see where it's pulling the stitch open. If you actually follow the V's on a stitch right here, if you follow this V, it'll line you up exactly with what stitch it was worked into. So we'll take our crochet hook, go into that same stitch, and do another single crochet. Like that. All right, we want 1 more into that same stitch. So 3 in the same stitch. So let's do another one. Yarn over, pull it through, then going over it, yarn over, and pull through 2. Okay, so you should have 3 stitches in the same spot. And you kind of see how they're all clustered together like that. All right, once you have those first 2 single crochets and then 3 into the next stitch, you want to turn your piece 180 degrees around like this. We're going to work our next stitches into the backs of these chains, so on the other side. Basically, what I like to do is if you find where our next chain is, so this was the last chain we worked into, we want to work into this chain next. And if you follow where that V was, from if it was on top, it would be a V. Now it kind of looks like an arrow. You follow that, that's going to be where you want to place your crochet hook. So that'll be the next chain. And then the next chain after that will be right here. Okay, so we want to work into those stitches right there. Into the first chain, we want to do 1 single crochet. So we're going to go into that next chain right here and do a single crochet by yarning over, pulling it through the chain, and then going over, yarn over again, and pull through 2, 1, and 2, like that. Okay, and then into our next stitch, we're going to do an increase, which just means 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So we're going to go into the next stitch over right here, get a crochet hook in there, then yarn over, pull it through the chain, and then going over it, we're going to yarn over again and pull through 2, 1, and 2. So there's our first single crochet of our increase. We want to do 1 more into the same exact stitch. So we're going to go into the same stitch, yarn over, pull it through, and then going over it again, yarn over, pull through 2, 1, and 2, like that. All right, the last thing we want to do for round 1 to get everything connected together is we want to slip stitch into the first single crochet that we made. Now, if you look, here's going to be the first single crochet. Now, as we work around in this pattern, we're going to be working under both loops of the top of our stitches. So that means we're going to get under this loop and under this loop simultaneously. You'll see we have like kind of a sideways V. That's where we want to place our crochet hook. Now into that first single crochet that we made, if you want to, you can count backwards as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it'll be that one right here. Into that stitch, we want to do something called a slip stitch. So to do that, we're going to go into it with our crochet hook like this, 1 and 2. And then we're going to do a slip stitch by yarning over, pulling it through that stitch with a twist and a scoop, and then pulling that same loop through the loop on the hook, like so. All right, and that's going to create this little tiny oval. Now the next round is actually going to start after that slip stitch. So we're going to start our next round. This is going to be the first stitch of our next round where we're going to work our crochet hook. Now before I do that though, we want to take some yarn in a secondary color to use as a stitch marker. So we're going to take a little bit of this yarn in another color and place it over our piece in between the loop. Let's get that again like this. There we go. We want it in between the two ends there, and we're just going to use this as a stitch marker as we go. It's the easiest way I find to use stitch markers. So we're just going to kind of ignore it, pull it really close to the end there, and it'll kind of guide our way into the next stitch, which is going to be right there. So we're going to get our crochet hook into the first stitch right here, like so. Now in round 2, we're going to start in this stitch and we're going to do the repeat of 1 single crochet into the first and then 3 increases in a row. And then we're going to repeat that again, 1 single crochet and then 3 increases in a row. An increase again just means 2 single crochets into the same exact stitch. That's all that an increase means. Now for round 2, you're going to increase up to 14 stitches, but round 1 actually only had 8 stitches around. And also in round 2, your last stitch is going to be this last slip stitch that you worked into. So let's go ahead and get into our first one right here. And we're going to start by doing our repeat with a single crochet into our first stitch. So there's 1 single crochet. After that first single crochet, I'm actually just going to flip. I'm going to pull our stitch marker almost all the way out like that and flip the end over so that it's not in our way as we continue on in this round. So that'll be 1 single crochet in the first, and then we want to do 3 increases in a row. So we're going to go into the next stitch, which is going to be right here. Make sure you get under both of those loops of that stitch, and we're going to do an increase, meaning just 2 single crochets in the same stitch. There's 1, and then in the same stitch again will be 2. See how we have 2 stitches in the same spot? All right, so that's our first increase. We want to do 3 of those increases in a row. So let's do our second increase. Our next one's going to be right here. Get into the next stitch under both loops, and we're going to do 2 single crochets in that same stitch. So there's 1 and 2 in that same stitch. Now we want to do 1 more increase into the third stitch right here. We're going to do 2 more single crochets for our third and final increase in our repeat. 1 and 2 like that. So again, look at where the stitch marker is. We'll count over. The first stitch right here is going to be a single crochet. You can really tell the difference when you really look at these V's here, because this one's going to be a single crochet because it's 1 V going into 1 stitch, whereas this one's got 2 V's going into 1 stitch, signifying that it's an increased stitch. So we have 1 single crochet, 1 increase, 1 increase, 1 increase. Perfect. Now we want to repeat that process again to get up from 8 stitches to 14 stitches around. So let's do our second repeat. That's going to be 1 single crochet into our first stitch right there, and then 3 increases in a row. So 1, 2, there's our first increase. Our next one's going to be right here. There we go. There's 1 and 2 into the same stitch. And then our last increase is going to be right here. Make sure you get under both loops. That's our slip stitch from our last round. 1, and then 1 more in the same stitch will be 2. All right, and that's going to increase our stitches up. We're going to pull our stitch marker up and over, ignore it completely. We're also going to cut our tail end from our very beginning, just somewhat shorter. You don't need it too short. About that's probably fine, and we're just going to ignore it, and that way it'll start to get stuffed into our piece. Okay, so that's the end of round 2. For round 3, we're just going to single crochet into each stitch around. You should have 14 stitches, and our first stitch is going to be right after that purple yarn to have our stitch marker signifier. So there we go. like that. And we're just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch around. This is a good opportunity for you to count your stitches, as there should be 14 stitches around. So as you go, continue counting your stitches and make sure you get up to 14 stitches around. There again should just be 1 single crochet per stitch. So notice again how this is an increase. You can see 2 V's going into one place, whereas this one's just regular single crochet, 1 V going into one place. Hey, if you like this video and the way I explain crochet, make sure to like down below and subscribe to the channel. If you hit the little bell icon, you can get notified when I come out with new videos, and I do new videos just like this all the time. You can also join our live crochet alongs by hitting that bell icon. It'll notify you when we do a live crochet along. I do them every single week, and you can join me, crochet something live, and ask any questions if you get stuck. It's a lot of fun, and check it out by just liking and subscribing down below. All right, that's going to be our last single crochet in our 14 stitches around. You can see how our piece is starting to build up. Now we can pull our stitch marker up and continue on to round 4. For round 4, we're going to be decreasing it down now. So we're going to learn a new stitch, which is an invisible decrease. We're going to start by doing 2 single crochets to get to our first decrease. So we're going to start with just a single crochet in our first 2 stitches. So there's 1 and 2. And then we're going to do our invisible decrease after that. For an invisible decrease, normally we've been working under both loops, right, for our single crochet. But this stitch, we will actually only want to work into the front loop, so only the loop closest to you. In addition to that, you want to work under this front loop and this front loop. So you want to work under 2 front loops simultaneously. Once you're going to get your crochet hook into those 2 front loops, you can just do a regular single crochet. You really want to make sure to scoop it, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. But that's all that it is. You're just doing a single crochet into the next 2 front loops simultaneously. There are other ways to decrease, by the way. If you don't like this way, I have a video up here that'll show you 3 different ways to decrease and why I like some ways more than another. This is my favorite way to decrease, though, personally. Okay, so we're going to get into the first stitch. The easiest way to get into that first stitch with your crochet hook is poke up from the bottom and just kind of wiggle your way into that first stitch. Then we can loop our crochet hook around to get into position under the next front loop, and then wiggle our way into that second front loop. Once you're under both of them, we can yarn over, and then we want to really make sure you get that scooped through. So we twist it, the crochet hook, to line up with the holes, and then really scoop it through. All right, once you get under those 2 loops, we can yarn over and pull through 2 to finish up our first invisible decrease. So again, this round was 2 single crochets and then 1 invisible decrease. And then we're going to do that one more time. So we're going to do 2 more single crochets and another invisible decrease. The hard thing with an invisible decrease is that it's kind of hard to see where your next stitch is, because it kind of looks like this is our next stitch, but really this is our next stitch right here. So what we can do now is we'll take our crochet hook. We're going to go into the next stitch, which is right here. We're just going to do a single crochet into that stitch. We want 2 single crochets before we get to another invisible decrease. So there's 1 and 2. And now another invisible decrease. We're going to go up from the bottom here. We're going to go front loop only, and then a single crochet by yarning over, twisting and scooping to really make sure you get under that stitch, and then yarn over again and pull through 2 to finish that second invisible decrease. After the second invisible decrease, all you need to do is do 6 more single crochets to get to the end of this round. So our next stitch, by the way, you can kind of see how this one's getting pulled out. So our next stitch is going to be right here. We're going to do 6 of these to get to the end. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be the end of round 4. Okay, so we're going to pull our stitch marker up now and continue on to round 5. For round 5, we want to do 1 single crochet in the first and then 3 invisible decreases in a row. Now this can be a little bit tricky, so just take it 1 stitch at a time. Let's go ahead and get that started. Oh, and I'm sorry, after our 3 invisible decreases, we'll do 5 more single crochets to get to the end of the round. Let's start with our first single crochet into our next stitch right after where our purple stitch marker is. So right here. And then 3 invisible decreases in a row. So let's go ahead and do our first one. Again, we want to go front loop only and front loop only, and then do a single crochet. So I twist and scoop through and yarn over and pull through 2. So there's 1 invisible decrease. We want 3 of those. So there's 1. Then our next one's going to be right here, front loop and front loop. Then another single crochet under those for our second invisible decrease. And then our third and final invisible decrease, we're going to start right here. We're going to go front loop only and front loop only, and then a single crochet. Yarn over, twist and scoop, then yarn over and pull through 2. Okay, and we're going to finish this round up by doing 5 single crochets to get to the end of the round. So our next one's going to be right there. It's kind of, again, hard to see after an invisible decrease where your next stitch is. So if you really have a difficult time with that, it might be easiest just to count backwards from the end. That's a nice little trick that you can use if you're really having a difficult time finding where the next stitch is. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3. We want 5 to get to where this purple stitch marker is. So 4, we are there. And our last one will be, whoopsies. You really want to make sure you're under both loops if you're doing just a regular single crochet, by the way. Okay, so we're going to pull our stitch marker up here, and we're actually going to pull our loop out a little bit because now we want to add our eyes. So pull our stitch marker up, and we'll go ahead and add some eyes. Now I'm going to be using 6mm eyes today for my eyes. I have seen some people make them using 8mm eyes, and they're actually really, really cute with giant eyes like that. But I think I'm going to stick to the classic and stick with 6mm eyes in this video. Now the eyes have a very specific spot that I like to put them. I'm going to hold our piece upside down like we've been crocheting it so that it's easier for us to find our location. The first location, they're both going to be in round 3, and it's going to be round 3 stitch number 2 and round 3 stitch number 9. The easiest way to find round 3, by the way, is we just finished round 5. So that's going to be the end of round 5. That'll be the end of round 4, which means that's going to be the end of round 3 right there, which means that's going to be the beginning of round 3. So if this is the end of round 2, that's the beginning of round 3. So that's stitch number 2 in round 3. So that's stitch number 1 is right here, right after the stitch marker. Stitch number 2 is going to be right here. So that's going to be our first stitch. And I always like to just place the eye in the spot first before I lock it in to make sure that both of them are going to be in the right spots. So that's going to be our first stitch in stitch number 2, and then our next one's in stitch number 9. So that's 2, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 and 9. So this one's going to be our next one right there. Go ahead and get our eye up there and wiggle it in. Okay, and then I always like to look at it from the top and look at it from the front. You know, I also like to look at it from the top, make sure that it's coming from both sides, like so it's kind of even. See, that's pretty even. There it is from the front, pretty even. This one's not as squished in yet, but you can kind of see how it looks. And that's pretty good. Okay, so I like where those are, so I'm going to lock them into place. We're going to take this locking mechanism here, and it's kind of hard because the hole's really tiny, but you can kind of see that little, see this little jabby thing on the inside. You can be pretty brutal with your crochet, by the way. It won't get hurt. Just have it facing outwards like this, so you just have the end of the eye there, and then place the back of the eye on it. You can place it either way. I actually like to place it this way because it's a little bit easier to do. And then once you get it started, I just pop it in like that, and it'll lock everything in place. And then I'll place that on the inside, and we're going to do the same on the other eye. So get the end just barely poking out like that. Place the eye on there, and just lock it into place. Okay, that's going to be how to add the eyes and the face. Perfect, perfect. All right, let's keep on crocheting on. Let's get our crochet hook into our loop again, and we'll pull it a little tighter. And let's go ahead and make sure the stitch marker's on the right side. We're going to flip the stitch marker out to keep track of our place and continue on to round 6. For round 6, we actually want to do 3 invisible decreases in a row. And I will say this actually might be one of the most difficult rounds of this pattern is because it's really tiny at this point. So what I like to do is hold it in place like this as I do my invisible decreases. Our first invisible decrease is going to be right here, and we're just going to go under one loop at a time. So we'll go, oops, there we go. Front loop only, so only the top of it, and then the next front loop only right here, and then we're going to do our single crochet. So there's 1. We want 3 of those in a row. Our next one's going to be right here. So you look at the top a little bit, and front loop, and front loop. Once you have those 2, we'll do a single crochet. And then our last one, for our invisible decreases at least, front loop and front loop. and then our single crochet. Okay, so that's going to be our three invisible decreases. Now we want to do 3 single crochets to get to the end of the round. So that's going to be our last one. 1, 2, 3. Start right here. So this is going to be our first one. And you can kind of see how I like to do, here, let me do that one again. You can see how I like to do crochet at this small of a piece. I like to poke straight down into the head and then poke my crochet hook back up like that to get my crochet hook into place, where I can yarn over with my yarn, pull through, then yarn over and pull through 2. So there's 1. Here's our next one. There's 2. And then our last one will be right here. Down and in. And whoopsies. Let's get that loop back on there and pull through 2. That'll be the end of round 6. You should only have 6 stitches around now. It's really small there. If you want to count your stitches, just count the V's. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be that stitch right there. Okay, let's pull our stitch marker up again and continue on to round 7. For round 7, it's actually a pretty easy round where we're just doing a single crochet per stitch. The hard part is it's such a tiny hole that it's really hard to get in there, but we're just going to do the same technique as before where we poke straight into the body and then poke up through the neck. And then we're going to do our single crochet. And we want 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet per stitch, 6 single crochets total. So there's 1 and 2. We're just going to keep doing that around. And you can just keep repeating this round, by the way, if you want to make a your Brontosaurus with a really, really long neck. Actually, that's my goal to do very soon. I want to make a super duper long necked Brontosaurus. I think that would be just so funny. All you need to do that is just continue repeating this round of just doing a single crochet into each stitch around over and over and over again. And the more times you repeat that, the higher the neck is going to be. The longer the neck is going to be. And yeah, it's going to make your long neck dinosaur really long neck. So you can kind of see how it's coming together right there. But if you keep repeating this round, it's going to get bigger and bigger. And you can make a really long necked dinosaur, which I think would be really fun and just silly in general. But for this pattern, we're just going to do our 1 round of single crochets. Now, I'll also say if you do that, where you repeat it consistently to make a longer neck, you do want to make sure that the end of the round is in a similar place as where the end of the round is here. So let's say I repeated this like 7 times in a row. As you can see, our piece kind of starts to tilt to the right. As we do it, like, our stitches will start to kind of pull over and over. So our end of the round, after doing this like 5 or 6 rounds in a row, it might actually end the round here. What you want to do then is you want to single crochet a few more just so that the end of the round lines up a little bit better. And so it lines up in the same position as where it is right now. That's my only caveat. That way that the body and the neck are facing the same way and that everything is facing the right way. Okay, but let's continue on now to round 8. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Before we get to round 8, I do want to stuff the head a little bit. So to stuff the head, we're going to take I like to use either a pencil or a chopstick like this, and we're just going to get stuffing all the way in here. And the really important thing is you want to get stuffing in front of where the eye is. So we're going to grab a little bit of stuffing. You don't really need too much, by the way. You just need a little bit, and we're just going to do a little bit at a time. I'll place it right over the hole and take my chopstick or whatever. The reason a chopstick works really well is because it really grips onto the stuffing like this. And you could stuff it with some extra yarn, by the way. Like, say you have a bunch of extra threads of yarn. That's a great way to use your scraps. There we go. We want to scoop it, and we want to make sure that it gets all the way up in the head and in front of the nose. That's what's really important here. We'll just do a little tiny bit more into the top of the head a little bit more. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay, so now we can continue on, and we are on round 8. Let's get our stitch marker in place. And pull our stitch marker up, rather, like this. Okay, for round 8, we want to increase it up again. This round is actually a little bit weird. We're going to start by doing 4 single crochets, just like normal. So let's go ahead and just get started like that. And the reason we're doing that is we want to line up where the single crochets are with the back of your piece, because now we're going to start to make some of the body. So we add, basically we're kind of starting to add the tail. So we got 4 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, and then our last one's going to be right here for 4. Okay. After those 4 single crochets, we're going to do something a little weird. First, we're going to do an increase into the next stitch. So into our next stitch right here, we're going to do an increase, which again just means 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So that's 1, and then into the same stitch will be 2, like that. Now, after doing that increase, we want to create, basically start to create the tail parts. So we're going to start that by chaining 3. So we're going to yarn over and chain 3. So 1, 2, and 3. After you chain 3, you want to skip the first chain that you made and single crochet 1 into the next 2 stitches. So right here, we're going to do 1 single crochet into the first stitch. And make sure you work under that top loop of your chain. So there's 1, and then 2 is going to be right there. So that's 2. 1 and 2. After those 2 single crochets, all you need to do is do 1 more increase into the stitch on the body. So that's going to be right here, right before the stitch marker, our last stitch that we want to work into for the body. Right, like that. We want to do 2 single crochets for an increase. So there's 1, and then 1 more into the same stitch will be 2. Oops, there we go. Okay, and you see we kind of have this like little tail kind of going on there, and that's going to just be how we start to build the body out. All right, that's going to be the end of round 8. We'll pull our stitch marker up like this and continue on to round 9. For round 9, we're going to start with an increase. So we're going to start in our first stitch right here and do 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So there's 1, and then another one in the same stitch will be 2, like that. By the way, the end of the last round was going to be 10 stitches around. So you should have 10 stitches at the end of round 8. Now for round 9, we're going to be increasing it up. So we're starting with our increase right there. After our increase, we want to do 2 single crochets and then another increase. So right here will be our next single crochet. We're going to go 1, and then another one's going to be right here. Will be 2. So 1, 2. And then an increase after that. So after our 2 single crochets, another increase right here. So that's 1, and then another one into the same stitch will be 2. Okay. Next, after doing that increase, we want 2 more single crochets. So right here, got 1, and then this one will be our next one right here, will be 2. All right, after we've done that, we've come upon the back of our piece. When we're working into these chains, we want to start by working into the chains themselves. We're going to do 3 single crochets up, and then working into both loops of the single crochets that we made into the tail part, we want to do 1 single crochet per stitch. So that's 1, 2 down. So 3 up, 2 down. The places for these 3 single crochets that we're working into the tail part here, we want to start into this top chain right here. So that's going to be our first one right there. Our second one's going to be right here. And then our third one's going to be right into that chain right there. After that, we're going to do 1 and 2 into each of those stitches. And then at the very end here, working back into the body stitches, we're going to do 2 single crochets into that body, which is going to bring our whole piece up from 10, which is what our end was in round 8, up to 15, which is what our stitch count is going to be at the end of round 9 here. Okay, so we're going to start into our first chain right here, do our first single crochet, and then go into our next chain right here. Might need to use my nail to help guide the hook into the chain, and do another single crochet into that chain, and then into our last chain, which is going to be right there. Kind of see, you just want to poke your crochet hook through that and do another single crochet into that chain as well. All right, now we want to do 2 single crochets down. So starting in this one, we're going to go 1, and then into the next one right here, 2. And then finally, we want 2 more single crochets into our body stitches. So there's 1, and then our last one's going to be right here for 2. Okay. We'll pull our stitch marker up, and that'll be the end of round 9. And now we're on to round 10. We actually only have a few more rounds to go. And this round's going to be, now we're going to get into it being a little bit normal now that we made that little tail part. So for our next round, round 10, we currently have 15 stitches around. We're going to increase up to 17 by doing 10 single crochets, and then 2 increases, and then 3 more single crochets to finish up the round. So let's start with those 10 single crochets. We're going to start right after our stitch marker right here, and we're going to do 10 single crochets to make our way around. And hey, again, if you like this video, like and subscribe down below. And also comment down below. And you know what? If you're watching this part of the video, comment down below with something really weird, like a weird emoji that other people won't know because they skipped this part of the video. So let's go with an emoji of a pigeon, an ancestor of the dinosaur. Comment down below with a pigeon emoji and I'll know that you saw this part of the pattern. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because I think people skip this part. 8, 9, and 10. So that's going to be the end right there. Okay, so we've done our 10 single crochets. And then now we're going to do 2 increases in a row. And again, remember, each increase is 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So we're going to start into this stitch and do 2 single crochets in that stitch. So there's 1, and then in the same stitch is 2, like that. Now we're going to do another increase right here, 2 in the same stitch. So 1 and 2, like that. And then finally, we're going to do 3 more single crochets to get to the end of the round. So that's 1, 2, and then our last one right here will be 3. And now you should have 17 stitches around, and we have finished up round, what is that? Round 10. So we just finished up round 10. All right, let's pull our stitch marker up again, and we're going to continue on to round 11. For round 11, we just need to do 1 single crochet per stitch. So that's just 17 single crochets total. So 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around. A nice easy round and a good chance for you to count your stitches again. So go ahead and count your stitches here. And yeah. Hey, I really hope you like this video. I spent a long time working on this pattern. I've worked on this pattern for years and years. So I really hope you like it. I made this like years ago and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna save it for the perfect opportunity, and why not use it now when we're coming out with our new board game. I really hope you like the new board game, by the way. Again, if you want to learn more about the board game, just check out the links down below. It's at lavarungame.com, and I spent a long time on it, so I really hope you enjoy it. It's really cool. It's one of the coolest things I've made. Okay, so that's going to be 16, and this will be our last stitch, stitch number 17. Okay, and that's going to be the end of round 11. We're up to round 12 now. Only a few more rounds to go. Let's pull our stitch marker up and continue on to round 12. For round 12, we're going to do 11 single crochets and then 2 increases in a row. Again, remember, each increase is 2 stitches. So 2 increases in a row back here, and then 3 more single crochets, and then we're going to start making our leg as our very last stitch in this round. And I actually have a few things I want to go over before we do that. So let's go ahead and get to that point, and then we'll talk about the leg. Let's start by doing 11 single crochets to work our way around. We're using a bobble stitch, by the way, for the legs, if you already know how to do a bobble stitch, but I will, of course, be teaching you that in this video. So there's 3 single crochets, 4, we want to go all the way up to 11, 5, 6, and 7, 8, 9, 10, and this is going to be our last stitch right here for 11. And then we want to do 2 increases in a row. Again, don't forget, an increase just means 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So there's 1 increase, and then another increase right here, 1 and 2. After those 2 increases, we want to do 3 single crochets to get to the end of the round where we're going to start making our legs. So let's do 3 single crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now we come upon our first leg. Now, I do actually have 2 different ways to make these legs. I'm going to show you the main way, of course, where we're making just our regular bobble stitches, which are going to be these legs here. This is my favorite way to make the legs. However, I do, and I will show you in just a moment, have a way to make it where you can have little fins, so you can kind of make a Nessie. It's also called a Plesiosaur, is the dinosaur that it's supposed to be replicating. But you can kind of see, like, we do the exact same thing, but instead of making little legs, we're making little fins. So I'm going to show you the fin option as well right now. But let's start by making the bobble stitches first. So for a bobble stitch, it's my favorite way to make legs. All you need to do is we're going to go into the next stitch, and we're going to do basically 4 double crochets put together. We're going to start by yarning over and then working our way into the next stitch. So right here, and then we're going to yarn over again and pull through that stitch like so. Now you should have 3 loops on the hook. Now we can yarn over again and pull through just the first 2 loops, just the first 2. So there's 1 and 2 like that. Okay, so that's the start of it. We want to repeat that same process 4 times total. You can increase it more or less if you want a bigger leg, but we're going to do 4 times for this leg. So there's our first repeat. Let's do it again. We're going to yarn over, go into the same exact stitch. It's going to be right here where we can yarn over again and pull that through the loop. Then we're going to yarn over again and pull through just the first 2 loops, 1 and 2, and that's going to be our second repeat. Again, we want 4 of those repeats. So let's do it again. Yarn over, into the stitch, and yarn over and pull through. Going over the stitch, yarn over and pull through 2. 1 and 2. Okay, so there's 3 repeats. You can see how we have 1, 2, 3, and then our first loop right there. So one more time, yarn over, into the stitch, yarn over and pull it through. Then yarn over and pull through 2, 1 and 2. To finish up a bobble stitch, we want to yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook. There should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on the hook. So once we're yarned over, which we just did, we can twist to line it up with the holes and then scoop it through like that. And that'll finish up our bobble stitch in our first leg. That'll also be the end of round 12. And we're going to do 3 more of these bobble stitches in round 13 for the rest of our legs. Okay, so I'm going to pull my stitch marker up here. Now, before I continue on to the next round, I want to show you the alternative way to make these legs so that you can make the fins for a plesiosaur. So here I have a plesiosaur that's right at that same stitch. So this is where I would be making a bobble stitch. We just made the bobble stitch right there. But in this version, I want to make fins. So for a fin, it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be the same exact places as the bobble stitches. But instead of doing a bobble stitch, we're going to start by chaining 5. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. After you chain 5, you actually want to pull it tight, which will pull those last 2 chains nice and tight. See how I kind of like pull them tightly there? Then we want to skip those first 2 chains. So skip 1, skip 2. Into the 3rd chain from the hook, we want to do a single crochet. So we're going to go into that 3rd chain from the hook, just into the top of the chain there, and do 1 single crochet like that. 1 and oops, 2. And you'll see that kind of makes a little point at the end of the fin. Next, we want to do a half double crochet into the next stitch. Now, I know that sounds like a weird stitch, but it's actually not too tough. You just need to yarn over before you go into the stitch. So yarn over, then go into the stitch, which will be right here. Yarn over again and pull that through the stitch. And now you should have 3 loops on the hook. You can yarn over and pull through all 3 loops simultaneously by really twisting and scooping and wiggling your way through the stitch. You really want to make sure you get under all those threads of that half double crochet. All right, so we did 1 single, 1 half double. The last part is you want to do a slip stitch into the last chain. So you can kind of see the last chain right here. Get into that chain with your crochet hook and do a slip stitch by yarning over, pulling it through the loop and then through the loop on the hook like that. And that's going to be how to start our fin. So you can kind of see how it makes this little fin right there. After you make a fin, you want to finish it up by doing a single crochet into the stitch that you would normally put the bobble stitch into. So that's going to be right here. We want 1 single crochet. 1 and oops. I didn't get through all that stitch. Let's do that last single crochet again. My yarn's getting threaded because I keep pulling this same thing out over and over because I was like, you know what? I want to show this on camera. Let me finish that last slip stitch one more time. Okay, and then you want to do a single crochet into that next stitch. So into the stitch, yarn over and pull it through, then yarn over and pull through 2 with a twist and a scoop. So there's 1 and 2. Okay, so that's how you want to make the fins if you want to add fins instead of doing bobble stitch legs. And you just want to repeat that same thing for every one of the places where you would normally put a bobble stitch. The rest of the pattern is made the exact same way. Okay, let's get back to our main Brontosaurus now. Okay, so we're going to pull our stitch marker up, and now we can continue on to round 13. By the way, you should have 19 stitches around, so if you want to count your stitches, you should have 19 around. For round 13, we're going to do the following repeat 3 times. The repeat is 2 single crochets and then a bobble stitch. That same repeat 3 times around to add 3 more legs for our Brontosaurus. So let's start that. We're going to start into our next stitch right here. We're going to do 1 single crochet into that stitch, like that. I like to pull it a little tighter after bobble stitch. You want this bobble stitch, by the way, to be facing on the outside. Sometimes when you do it, it'll be kind of indented like that. Just kind of pop it out like this. All right, so there's our first single crochet. So we have 1. Our next one's going to be right here. 2 single crochets, and then a bobble stitch into the third. So yarn over, get into that third stitch, pull through, yarn over, and pull through 2. 1 and 2. And then we're going to repeat that 4 times total. So there's our first repeat. There's our second repeat. Third, and then 1 more will be our fourth. And then we can yarn over and pull through all the loops to finish our bobble stitch. So that's going to be the first repeat done. 2 single crochets, 1 bobble stitch. We want to repeat that 3 times in a row. So there's our first repeat. Let's do it again. This is our second. 1 single, 2 singles, and then another bobble stitch, which I'll just kind of power through now. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think I've made thousands and thousands of these bobble stitches at this point. All right, so there's our second repeat. We want 1 more of those repeats, so 2 more single crochets and then another bobble stitch. 1 and 2, and then another one right here. Hey, what other kind of dinosaurs would you guys like to see in the future? Let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions or things that you're like, hey, oh my gosh, you've made so many cute dinosaurs, but you haven't made a Parasaurus. I can't ever say that dinosaur's name, or a Plesiosaurus or something like that. Let me know if you have a special dinosaur that I haven't made yet in the comments. All right, that's going to be our last bobble stitch and the last of our legs. After doing those 3 repeats, we want to finish round 13 by doing 4 more single crochets and then an increase, and then 4 more single crochets to get to the end of the round. Okay, so let's start by doing 4 single crochets to get up. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4 single crochets, and then an increase into the next stitch right here. So that's 1, and then another one into the same stitch will be 2. Okay, then we want to do 4 more single crochets down. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see we're actually ending this round 1 stitch early before the bobble stitch. So that's really important. You want to end before the bobble stitch there. You can see that's going to be the end of round 13. You should have 20 stitches around if you want to count your stitches. But again, you want to finish that right before where that bobble stitch is. Let's see how our legs are coming together. All right, we actually only have 1 more round to go. So let's continue on to round 14 and our final round of our piece. So to start, we're going to pull our stitch marker up like this. We're going to rip our stitch marker out very soon. But before we do that, we want to do our last round of stitches. For round 14, you basically just want to do 5 invisible decreases in a row. Just all the way, it'll get right past that leg. So just 5 invisible decreases in a row, or decreases in general. If you have another decrease method that you like to do rather than an invisible decrease, you totally can. But of course, I'm going to do invisible decreases. So we're going to start into where that bobble stitch's top is. So right at the top of the stitch, you can see those 2 loops. Get into the front loop only. And then the next front loop only right here, and then do 1 invisible decrease. So there's 1. Oops, lost my crochet hook. There we go. There's 1. Next one's right here. Front loop, front loop. There's 2. Again, you only want 5 of these. So this will be 3. And this can be actually significantly more difficult with those with the fins, by the way. So if you're having a difficult time with fins, maybe try doing a single crochet 2 together, which is a different method for decreasing that you can find in that video that I pointed out a few minutes ago. But there are our 5 invisible decreases. So if we count over from where our stitch marker is here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 invisible decreases. There we go. Okay, so now all you need to do to finish this up is we can cut the yarn. You actually want a somewhat long end, maybe about that long. What is that, like a foot or so? And we'll go ahead and cut it like that, and just pull it all the way through. That's all you need to do. Just pull it all the way through like this. Okay. To sew this closed, oh, well, actually, you know what? Let's remove the stitch marker all the way down. You can kind of see where all the loops are with that stitch marker, by the way. Kind of cool looking. Looks like he's got a little tattoo. But I don't want the stitch marker in our final piece, so what we're going to do is we're just going to pull the stitch marker out. And I like to take it kind of 1 or 2 stitches at a time until I get close to the bottom, and then I can just rip it all out. There we go. And then from the bottom here, you just want to pull it with it so that there's the least amount of friction possible. There we go. Just pull it all the way through like that. Okay. All right. So now we just want to sew it closed. And it can be a little bit tricky, but honestly, it's really not too tough. Once you do it once, it makes it a lot easier. We're going to start by threading our end on our needle. And we're going to start by sewing the tail closed, and then we'll stuff it and sew the bottom closed. So we're going to start by skipping 10 stitches and folding the tail in half and seaming these together, the adjacent stitches together all the way up to the tip and then back down to the bottom, leaving the last stitch made with 10 stitches, or sorry, only 5 stitches unsewn. Okay, so we're going to skip 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is going to be right there. We're going to go in through the top of 10 and then out through the bottom of 1, because those are going to be the ones lined up. And I kind of see we're just going to kind of line it up and sew all these together. So those 2 are going to go, those 2, those 2, those 2, and those final 2. And then we're going to go back down. So first going up like this, make sure your loop is on the outside as you work your way around. So there's 1. Next stitch over is going to be right here. So that's this stitch and this stitch. Will be 2. And as I go through, you'll notice how I kind of like to pull the last one a little tighter as I go. Then this one, 1, 2. Like that. And these 2. Make sure the loop is on the outside. This. And then our final 2, we're going to be these ones. 1 and 2 like that. And then we're going to work our way back down. So go ahead and pull that out. And now all you need to do to work your way back down the tail to get back to the beginning is follow where that stitch is. So go back into it and follow it with your needle. Like that. See how I'm like kind of following it? Make sure it's on the outside. And you really want to make sure that it kind of turns it into a V. That's important because it's going to mimic the V's on the rest of our stitches and make these seams very invisible. Okay, so there's our first one. Now we're continually working our way back down. Like this. And this one right here. Into that stitch and out through that one. Make sure it turns it into a V. And then our last one, like this. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the last one. We have one more. That. And then our last one, all we need to do for our last one is go into this last bit, and then we can kind of come out through the bottom of our piece like this. Okay. There we go. All right, and so that should just leave you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches undone at the bottom there. So just 5 stitches undone. A nice little hole for us to stuff our piece with. So we're gonna pull that out and we're gonna stuff it up now a little bit. First, we wanna stuff the main body and the tail. So I'm just gonna use my chopsticks here. And I'm gonna start by stuffing up the body, and then I'll work my way over to the tail after that. Now the tail is kind of understuffed, so I'm gonna take a little bit more stuffing here and just kind of work it into the tail itself. So that way it has a little bit of stuffing in the tail. You can also stuff it with a nickel. Sometimes I like to do that to add a little bit of extra weight to this. I don't think it's really necessary for this small of a piece, but you totally could if you are feeling like you want to add a little bit more weight to your Brontosaurus. Okay, so we've got those stitches all sewn up. The last thing we need to do is sew it closed. To sew closed, we want to thread our end onto our needle again. It kind of got pulled off for me. And all you need to do is you want to go through the front loops only of all the 5 last stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one's starting it. You want to go in through the front loop only. of that one, like this. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our last one's going to be right here for 5. And then once you have those 5 in, you can just hold it really tight close to the bottom and pull it nice and tight, and it'll close that hole up really tightly though. And then finally, you want to go into the bottom. It's kind of nice actually, if you want to go into the bottom, it can get a little loosened up if you just go straight to the bottom. So what I like to do sometimes is kind of go in through the side bottom so that I kind of go into another stitch on the inside. And then that way I can come out through the bottom and not have to worry about anything coming undone. I haven't had a problem with it coming undone yet, but I just worry, you know. And we're just going to pull it nice and tight like that. It shouldn't come undone, especially if you did that little loop thing. And then we can cut the end nice and close. Squish it so that it hides that needle on the inside there. And just clean our little workstation here. And there we go. We have our little itsy bitsy Brontosaurus. Sometimes I also like to pinch the little feet too. Kind of nice to just make sure the feet come on the outside. And you can see he's sitting upright. He's so cute. I love him. Oh my gosh, you're so cute. I'm so obsessed with this pattern. So cute. Thank you so much for crocheting this pattern along with me. I hope you enjoyed making it as much as I enjoyed designing it, and I loved designing this pattern. Obviously, I kind of have an obsession with little baby dinosaurs at this point, but this one actually I've been sitting on for a while, waiting for my new board game to come out, so I think it's just the perfect opportunity. I really hope you enjoyed making it, and yeah. If you did, please like down below and subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell icon so you don't miss it when we go live, because I do live crochet alongs every single week, and check out more of my little dinosaurs at clubcrochet.com/dinosaur. If you really like this channel and you want to help support, please consider supporting monetarily with a membership or purchasing kits or merch in the store. Honestly, your support is the only way that this channel survives, so I really appreciate anybody who has supported. Thank you guys so much. Thanks again for crocheting along with me. Share your projects with me using our Instagram handles at club.crochet. You can find links for all those in the description as well. And yeah, thanks for watching. Pasta la pizza and happy hooking. Goodbye. Oh, hey, bye there.